Rookies Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers have officially arrived. Kyler Murray finishes as quarterback 1 on the week. Alvin Kamara scores 4 touchdowns. We digest the best and worst fantasy performances of week 2 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We are now 2 weeks through the NFL season. And last week we said, don't stress too much about bad performances. Let's see. Now, after week 2, we might start to get a little bit more worried about some players who have not been utilized through 2 weeks or have been playing very, very badly through 2 weeks. We'll get into all of that shortly here, but I want to talk about the great performances first of week 2, and we got to start with the rookies because both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers balled out. Harrison finished as the wide receiver 1 on the week so far, entering Monday Night Football, and Nabers as wide receiver 3. Both had over 125 receiving yards and a touchdown. What were your thoughts on these two players watching them in week 1, Vinny?
First off, I had them in 2 different lineups, and I was watching them help me win, which is fantastic. And if you recall on the show, I said the demon pick was Marvin Harrison scoring. He got that out of the way early, and we just had to watch the yards, and he got that out of the way early too. So that was really nice. And then, of course, going onslaught in our DFS lineup with Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, and Harrison, they all come through. Really, the Rams defense stinks, and now their offense might start to stink. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but yeah, you can't deny that this is an exciting offense when everything is clicking. Kyler Murray was running around making plays. Marvin Harrison Jr., this is what we wanted. This is what we expected. This is what we projected here before the season, that Kyler Murray was going to be back, running around. Michelle loved him. We loved Harrison. And then Nabers. We knew that he was going to be a big factor there with Daniel Jones. It doesn't matter. He doesn't have to be all that accurate because Nabers can go up and get the ball anywhere. Great matchup against the Commanders' secondary. So he just did a lot of damage. These are just elite talents. And we talked about this could be the second coming of A.J. Green and Julio Jones from 2011, immediately producing for their teams. I think it's very similar to that situation. So enjoy it. They made sure Harrison got involved. He was mad about week 1. He can't be mad about week 2. Kyler Murray balled out, got a better defense to attack at home. So the Cardinals, I think, can put up a lot of points this season. And the Giants, it's going to be up and down. But one person I know, maybe it's 2 people. It's maybe Malik Nabers and Devin Singletary, and everyone else is kind of not useful in the Giants. But we don't care as long as these guys are bringing up. And it's kind of like the Cardinals, right, too? You also have Marvin Harrison. You have Trey McBride. You have James Conner. Everyone else, over with Kyler Murray, it doesn't matter, right? This is the way this offense is going to go. So I love it. Exciting times. These rookies are for real. They should be in lineups every week.
Yeah, Nabers gets 18 targets. That's insane.
Crazy.
They do have 2 hard matchups coming up against the Browns and Cowboys, but with 18 targets, it might not be as easy as it was against the Commanders, but you just keep playing him. His ceiling is so high. Harrison, blowout game for the Cardinals here, where Kyler Murray finishes as the quarterback 1 on the week. Trey McBride's the tight end 2. James Conner, the running back 6. They all were great, and they get the Lions next week, and then the Commanders in week 4. So keep dialing up your Cardinals offensive players. Now the Saints look like an insane offense. Derek Carr is doing his thing. Alvin Kamara, 4 touchdowns, 43 fantasy points. Rashid Shaheed has another long touchdown, finishes with 96 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver 7 over the first 2 fantasy weeks. They get the Eagles next week. I mean, the Saints offense looks like they're on fire, completely different from last year. Chris Olave still not doing much though for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened is what happened with the Texans last year. They borrowed from the 49ers offense with Bobby Slowick. This group is borrowed from the 49ers offense with Clint Kubiak, and you're seeing the results. It's the running game, opening things up, moving the blockers around. Kamara's looked like his youthful version all of a sudden. Like we thought he was washed, and he almost tied his own record of 6 TDs from Christmas Day 4 seasons ago. So he looked great. This offense looked great, except for Chris Olave. Not a lot of Taysom Hill when Kamara's scoring a lot, and not a lot of Olave when Shaheed is making so many plays. But Olave did have a third down yard catch. What I like about this offense is Derek Carr is being comfortable. He's throwing off the running game, which he should, finding guys who are open. They're scheming guys open well. I mean, look at the output. 47 points actually going back to week 18 of last year. 47 points in week 1. 44 again. I don't know if it's going to sustain itself. The Eagles defense a little bit trickier there in week 3, but man, you got to enjoy it. Look, I'm not running out to get Derek Carr. I'm just not, because the wheels are going to fall off.
He had 11 completions.
Yeah,
that's it yesterday.
He should be rostered. I'm going to say this as a backup. You should use him. Look at the matchup on the bye week, but he should be definitely a backup involved. He's great right now in Superflex. Just roll with him as your QB2. But yeah, don't go out and get so excited about Carr, because again, a lot of this is based on the running game. Rashid Shaheed is not going to make a big play every week. You're not going to have the tight ends go off. We saw that from week 1 to week 2. And Olave is still a little bit off here. So Derek Carr is going to have some clunker games. It could happen as early as next week against the Eagles and Fangio's defense, right? So be careful. But I think what you should be most excited about is Alvin Kamara. He looks awesome, and the way it's going with Christian McCaffrey's injury and all this stuff, Kamara might end up, who knows, as the RB1 overall at this rate.
Or like whenever he plays Mike Zimmer's defenses, right? Because his 6 touchdown game was against Mike Zimmer defense with the Vikings. He plays against Mike Zimmer yesterday. So he just destroys Mike Zimmer's defenses, that's for sure. Justin Jefferson proved that he could play with Sam Darnold and be good. 4 receptions, 133 yards, a touchdown. He had that 97-yard touchdown. But he got hurt. So keep an eye on his injury report. He hurt his quad. He gets the Texans. Obviously, you're rolling with Justin Jefferson every week, but it was nice to see some big plays from him with Sam Darnold. An old man, Devontae Adams, does it up against the Ravens, a hard matchup. He gets 12 targets, 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I think the bigger story here, though, is Brock Bowers, rookie, 9 receptions, 98 receiving yards. Finishes as the tight end 4 in the week. He is tied for the second most fantasy points among tight ends over 2 weeks with George Kittle. So
that's something.
I mean, Brock Bowers is proven to be a great draft pick so far. They get the Panthers next week. Now I think you could just trust Bowers every week.
Yeah, I think what's happened is all the mojo that was with that Cole Kmet, him being a decent fantasy option, is now moved with this Luke Getsy offense to the Raiders. And look, Jacoby Myers has just been not used at all. So basically they pivoted to using a lot of Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. We also know this running game isn't going the way they expected here with Zamir White. They're not as run heavy as we think with White and or Alexander Mattison. I know he scored, but it's really going to be a lot of passing with Gardner Minshew. They fell behind in this game. They ended up winning, even though they were down a couple touchdowns late. But they're going to be behind a lot of games. So the passing volume is going to be there with the Raiders. So it's always going to be there. Minshew, we know his guys. His boys are now Adams and Bowers, ladder, rinse, repeat. He's going to keep targeting these guys in every game. And why wouldn't you, right? They can go up and get balls. They're big, athletic dudes. So I'm very excited about what Bowers can do forward. And Devontae Adams, look, he needed a game like that to jumpstart him, get going. You want him to stay kind of checked in, right? We don't want him to check out with the Raiders. So getting a win over the Ravens on the road and being a big part of it is going to keep him checked in. And Gardner Minshew is going to keep feeding him the ball.
2 guys you got later in your draft at wide receiver, Chris Godwin and Jameson Williams, both had another great game this week. Godwin with 117 yards and a touchdown. In week 1, he had 83 yards and a touchdown. He has the most fantasy points among wide receivers through the first 2 weeks. He seems to be this go-to guy in the Buccaneers offense with Evans, being used as that big play guy. And then Jameson Williams, he's getting the targets, 11 targets yesterday. He has the 6th most fantasy points among wide receivers over 2 weeks. Amon-Ra also had a great game, so it was nice to see him involved. But Chris Godwin and Jameson Williams are looking like 2 of the best values so far that you could have got in your fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I like the fact that Chris Godwin, they're not messing around. They're back in his favorite spot at the slot, and that's a big thing that Liam Cohen has done here. Put Godwin where he can belong. Part of it is also having another guy like Jalen McMillan, where you can use 11 personnel, where you can put Godwin in the slot. And even Mike Evans is taking a backseat at times to Godwin. So again, I like it. It keeps Baker Mayfield throwing in the middle of the field. Godwin has proved he's still got it here. So good adjustment here to get him back in the comfort level slot. And Jameis Williams, look, they've wanted to unleash this guy for a long time. They wanted to throw downfield. Now, the results weren't great for Jared Goff, so I wonder if they'll compress it a little bit and say, don't force the ball downfield to Jameis Williams maybe. But yeah, it's great you're doing this and you're showing off your arm, but let's take more calculated shots, be more efficient. Let's get him off the play action and throw downfield. So I love the targets, but may not be the best thing for Jared Goff.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to Jared Goff's terrible performance and Sam LaPorta disappearing probably because Jameson Williams is getting so utilized. We'll get into all those bad performances. I have one more great performance I want to hit on though. J.K. Dobbins, 17 carries, 131 yards, a rushing touchdown, running back 5 on the week. He's running back 3 over the first 2 weeks behind only Kamara and Achane. Now, the next 3 weeks are fantastic for him. He gets the Steelers, the Chiefs, and then a bye week. So I don't know if this is kind of the time that you say maybe, you sell on J.K. Dobbins high. I think he's such a special talent, though. And if he can stay healthy, it's great. But if you can sell him high for, a running back that's been disappointing like a Kyren Williams, I would think about doing that for sure.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is still splitting with Gus Edwards. The Chargers also are not going to rush for 395 yards in every 2-game stretch. It's not going to happen this season. They're also not going to play the Raiders and Panthers back-to-back in a lot of weeks. Yeah. So, the Steelers game will be interesting. We'll kind of see the real version of both teams, right? They're both 2-0 here. So we'll see, is this defense legit? Are they going to contain what Justin Fields does? And the offensive line, is it going to blow people off the ball that include TJ Watt up front, right? So we're going to see a lot more here, but he's getting the volume. He's clearly the lead. Edwards is kind of the reverse change of pace where he's kind of the power change of pace, and Dobbins is the explosive kind of lead here. So, and this team's just throwing very little. It's run, and the offensive line has just been awesome with all their guys. So I'm excited to see what goes forward Dobbins, but yeah, he's a classic. He's not going to get higher than this with his value. Try to trade him for one of those traditional RB1s, like Michelle said. This is when you can get them, and maybe if you've got Jordan Mason and you want to go get the Christian McCaffrey guy, this is a good time to go after him too, maybe with this move. So something to keep in mind there. So a lot of excitement here with these new emerging talents. We needed them, and we got a lot.
Yeah, we did. And then we had a lot of disappointing performances as well in week 2. And we're starting to get worried about some of these guys. We're going to dig into all of that right after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. They also have an insurance policy. They're the only money daily fantasy platform that has this, so your lineups still stay in play even if one of your guys leaves with an injury. You can still win on your other picks in your lineup. There is also a very special promotion going on for tonight's game. You can earn a share of $3 million if you place a $10+ lineup that includes Jalen Hurts more than 229.5 passing yards against the Falcons. And if he hits that, then anyone who has that lineup, a qualified lineup with that $10+ will share that $3 million pot to get started and to get into that. And then to also place, your other lineups for next week. All you have to do is download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL and Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by DoorDash, and you want delivery powered by DoorDash when you're trying to just chill and watch games there on Sunday. They got you covered, right? You want to just be at home, and you could be watching Red Zone. You could have all the games on with Sunday Ticket. Well, this is the way to just sit back, relax, and let the delivery come to you through DoorDash, because they're going to take care of you, bring you what you need and want here to get you through game day, whether it's some energy drinks to stay awake, coffee, or pushing it all the way through to dinner. Maybe you want some pizza and wings to carry you through the Sunday night game. Well, they're going to bring all that to you via DoorDash. All you have to do is use the promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order with DoorDash. It's a limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. And really with DoorDash, again, this is perfect for game day. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Get ready to do that this week. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show and look at some disappointing performances from week 2. These are guys that were going to push their stock down. So maybe some guys you want to look to trade for, that their values are low. Number 1 is Anthony Richardson. He did not look good at all. 3 interceptions.
So bad.
And where's Michael Pittman Jr.? He's disappeared. It's just Alec Pierce and Anthony Richardson playing catch, and then a lot of Jonathan Taylor doing all the running damage. So I knew this could be a little bit of a roller coaster with Anthony Richardson. Gets a little pressure. He's going to do this. So do we worry a little bit? The Colts are 0-2. Anthony Richardson looked good in week 1, but are we just too maybe rushing touchdown dependent on him?
I mean, we are. It's going to be a lot of the rushing that's dependent on him. Now, the Packers did a good job at stopping Richardson as a runner yesterday, and they did a good job against Jalen Hurts in week 1 too. So maybe they're just going to be a good defense against those mobile quarterbacks. I'm still I'm going to keep rolling with Anthony Richardson. Listen, you don't have to be a good NFL quarterback to be a good fantasy quarterback. And he doesn't look right now like he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'm still going to keep rolling with him, especially if you draft him early. You're going to have to do that. Now, 2 guys I think you need to just give up on until we see something more. It's Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Goff, 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Back-to-back bad home games. That was the one thing we had with Jared Goff, is that he was always good at home. That's when you could play him. Back-to-back home games that were just terrible for fantasy. And then he goes to Arizona next week, which is going to be a fine weather game because I believe the Cardinals are in the dome. But at the same time, you can't trust him. And Trevor Lawrence he's unplayable. 0 touchdowns, 220 yards. They get the Bills next week. If you have Trevor Lawrence, I wouldn't even want to play him in a super flex league. This dude just doesn't score fantasy points. He never has, never will.
Yeah, let me start with the first situation, Jared Goff. I mean, again, I think he's playing a little out of his element. We want Jameson Williams to be involved, but when is Jared Goff the best? When he's throwing middle of the field. Amari St. Brown, that was good to see, but Sam LaPorta, we'll see if he can get a little bit more consistent. But I think people know that, right? They're maybe forcing Jared Goff to throw downfield a little bit, which is odd to say. Here's a big play if you want it, because they know what the lines are about. Methodical drives, work in the middle of the field, and running the ball, right? When they're at their best, they can run over some teams, but they faced 2 kind of tricky teams the first week. But now you look at the Cardinals, what they did to the Rams, you're a little bit concerned with Goff, right? Going forward. So I don't count on the splits. Those are from the past, the home away. It looks like we can throw those out the window. 2 home games, 2 clunkers. So yeah, wait and see with Goff. I still think he'll have some value. Lawrence has been terrible, by the way, not just for the first 2 weeks, but the last half of last season. Now, they've got 1 win, I think, in their last 8 games. It came against Bryce Young and the Panthers, who just got benched. So basically, Trevor Lawrence beat a quarterback who was not good last year and is now benched this year. So I don't know what it is. Maybe he's another guy trying to make hero plays, right? Running around. Sometimes I don't know what he's doing. He's just, there's Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to fire into him downfield. But I think what we've seen is he needs Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram to be on the field to be somewhat productive. And we didn't have Kirk out for a lot of the season at the end. Evan Ingram got hurt in the warmups, so he didn't have his go-to guy in the middle of the field. So maybe adjusting to Brian Thomas Jr. And then when they choose to score, he's not scoring rushing touchdowns anymore, which he did a couple of years ago. It's Travis Etienne. So I don't know where the points are coming from. You got to point to some direction where the points are coming from. He's not running and not scoring. He's very inconsistent throwing the ball downfield. You're not going to get fantasy points that way, especially when you're facing defenses the level of Miami and Cleveland. Maybe it'll get better. I don't think it will because they're playing the Bills on Monday night next week. So
he's unplayable.
Absolutely not.
Now, I'm going to give you 3 wide receivers here that have been disappointing to start the year. Amari Cooper, my dude, right?
Boy.
8 targets, 3 receptions, 11 receiving yards. He has now
Oh,
17 targets this season for 27 receiving yards. I just don't even know how that's possible. Next, I mean, the schedule's nice coming up. Giants, Raiders, Commanders, Eagles, Bengals. And he's getting the targets. I don't know what to tell you. But him or Garrett Wilson, who had 4 receptions, 57 yards, is that just who he is? Because that's pretty much his line all the time, no matter who his quarterback is. Brandon Ayuk, a complete ghost again in his second game this year, 4 receptions, 43 yards. Who are you most worried about among this group moving forward?
I think it actually sneakily made me Amari Cooper because I don't know what's going on here, but Deshaun Watson seems to favor Jerry Jeudy all of a sudden, and it's weird.
It's not favoriting when you get 17 targets. It's just, I mean, Amari Cooper dropped a deep ball. It just
but I
went
think
right
he's
through his
trusting
hands.
him more. I'll just say that. Like the targets are there, but the connection between Watson and Cooper, it's just not consistent. Watson has been lousy, right? So Jerry Jeudy on these shorter balls, they're able to connect. So yeah, the targets are there for Cooper, what not, but I think they've just been off. I mean, keep in mind, Amari Cooper's massive game was with Joe Flacco last year. So I don't know. He's a guy that I never excited to play too much. Now they got a guy very similar out of the same school, Alabama, Jeudy. He runs similar routes. And maybe it'll get better, but this should have been better with no David Njoku. Maybe Judy has been the bigger beneficiary there. They've also involving Elijah Morris. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not into this passing game all that much, and they're just sort of off here. Even though they won and beat the Jaguars because they were playing Trevor Lawrence on the other side, it just not inspiring. Now I think Garrett Wilson will be okay. Let's watch this week because that Patriots secondary just got killed by DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So he's got to get going. Aaron Rodgers has got to see this weakness and get Garrett Wilson going. Titans tricky defense, as we've seen early in the season. Then Ayuk will be fine. He just needs some big plays to happen. Guess who they're playing this week? The Rams. So that's going to open things up. Ayuk will be just fine this week.
Yeah, I'm getting really worried about Wilson. This is our worries before. It was like, well, what if Rodgers doesn't fix everything? 9 of Rodgers' 18 completions. So half of his completions went to either Brees Hall or Braylon Allen, the running backs. And both of his touchdowns went to the running backs. It's like Rodgers is done so, and the only thing he could do is dump it down.
Yeah, he's a different type of quarterback. He's more like a caretaker. Hey, don't mess it up. Our defense and running game were pretty good. Don't mess it up. It's weird to think of Aaron Rodgers as that type of quarterback, but he might be, and that might be his strength to win games. So that's not great, however, for Garrett Wilson. We saw one random catch on the limited snap count for Mike Williams. So this passing game in general, this is my concern. Again, if they dominate with defense and can run the ball, they're not going to throw all that often. That's less opportunity for Wilson to do damage.
Now, top 2 tight ends drafted this year. Atrocious. I mean, Sam LaPorta is not being used. He got the same amount of targets as Tim Patrick yesterday. The same amount of targets. 1 more receiving yard. 2 receptions, 13 receiving yards. I guess you just keep rolling with them and hope they use them more. But, I mean, this offense is spreading the ball out incredibly. Like over 10 players had a target yesterday for the Lions. Now, their offense doesn't look good, so maybe they'll fix it where you just use Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and Sam LaPorta. Those should be the 3 guys that you're targeting. I guess Gibbs here and there with some checkdowns, but it's not going to him. And then same thing with Travis Kelce, 1 reception, 5 yards. Rashee Rice led the team again. Isaiah Pacheco, who fractured his leg, fibula, had 5 targets. So maybe now that he's going to be out for a while, Kelce will get more. But yeah, I mean, these are 2 guys you're just going to keep trusted and plug in, but it's gross so far.
Yeah, I mean, and then Mark Andrews came to life a little bit, but it was at the expense of Isaiah Likely. He didn't do that much. Trey McBride has been looking fantastic. Brock Bowers has been looking great. But the top, if you really invested, other than George Kittle and McBride, you're looking at LaPorta and Kelce. You've been very disappointed. You expect big points from LaPorta. That's why you took him maybe as the tight end 1 early on the board. But I mentioned, it's correlated to the fact that Jared Goff is not playing reality well. Like, I think they're going to have to make that adjustment, get LaPorta involved here. I think it can definitely happen this week. Travis Kelce almost scored, by the way. They did a little shovel thing, and he just got stopped basically inches short of the goal line. So he would have had a touchdown. I think 2 things will happen with Pacheco. He'll get a few more short area targets. you'll get more red zone looks, right? They're going to have to throw the ball a little bit because, look, Carson Steele is not going to be just a guy that they put into the end zone and fall over, or Samaje Perine, right? I think what you'll see is maybe more Mahomes throwing opportunities short, and that's going to be great for Kelce. So I think Kelce will be fine. Look, the diminishing returns are going to be there at some point as he gets older. He may not finish as a top 2 tight end, but I still think he'll be in the top half given how bad this position is. He'll get going at some point, and I think this week could be it against Atlanta.
Yeah, and to quickly wrap up the section of disappointing players, all Panthers players are unplayable. I know Andy Dalton is going to take the place of Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Bryce Young is getting benched. I'm not playing them, though, until I see Andy Dalton change his offense completely. I need to see it first. And then Broncos players are also unplayable. Cortland Sutton is unplayable. 1 reception, 28 yards. The running backs are unplayable. 11 carries for 17 yards for Javonte Williams. They're averaging they're getting nothing on the ground. This offense is terrible. Stay away from all Broncos and Panthers players until we see something change.
Yeah, and the one guy you also put on the list was Najee Harris. I thought he was going to have a bigger game this week, but what the Steelers are doing, your Steelers, are just saying, we don't really need to do much to win games. We just want to have Justin Fields run around, protect the ball, let's punt, and we'll play defense and win games. I mean, when the other team is the Broncos, and they're not moving the ball, why the heck would you try to do anything except once you have a lead, right? And Chris Boswell's nailing field goals from everywhere. When you would try to do something, but the Chargers will probably help that cause, right? But maybe playing a legit team is going to help the Steelers a little bit wake up offensively. George Pickens also quite game, but he had plenty of opportunities. Just some
it should have been a huge game for him.
Yeah.
He had a touchdown call back. He had like a 40.
Yeah.
The best play of Justin Fields, the best pass of Justin Fields' career got called back for the stupidest thing ever. Pickens could have had a huge game against Pat Surtain. He looked great. You keep plugging in Pickens. Najee's getting the carries. He looks good. It's just the touchdowns aren't there. We are going to get into some prizing players, like some guys that we did not expect to do much went off, and we're gonna give you a little quick sneak peek of maybe some guys you'll be considering on the waivers this week.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by the Game Time app, and with Game Time, you know that you're going to get the best prices on any event you want to see, whether it's a concert or sporting event. You can wait till the last minute and know that you're going to pay the best price and you're going to see the game or concert from where you want to see it. You'll get a good look at your seats. You'll know the value you're getting. So that's fantastic. And another feature I really like on Game Time is all-in pricing, where you can turn on this feature, see what you're going to actually pay in total there to secure to your tickets. So that is also fantastic. And you're going to pay a very good price for those tickets. You can wait till the last minute and make sure you get those mega deals. So they can also help you find out what you want to see with their curation, which is great. So once you start picking some concerts and sporting events, Game Time will kind of tailor the app for you. So you know what's available for what you want to see. Get a good look at the seats with the seat views, and the lowest price guarantee is awesome. They'll credit you 110% of the difference if you can find a lower price there. Your purchase also is covered with Game Time ticket coverage with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. They'll take care of you all the way here, and you'll be sitting and good to go for your game. Game Time ticket coverage includes lowest price guarantee, events cancellation protection, 24-hour returns guarantee, job loss insurance, and on-time ticket delivery. You can't get anything better than that. Check it out at Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use that opportunity to get the best tickets only on Game Time. All right, it is time to close the show, and these are some surprising players that we did not see doing things here in week 2. So let's start with one guy, Jackson Smith-Njigba. We were very down on him after week 1. He wasn't doing all that much against the Broncos. Could have been a product of a matchup, but the Seahawks went from running the ball a lot and Kenneth Walker, and week 2, they decided to throw the ball a lot on the Patriots because Kenneth Walker was out. And JSN, DK Metcalf, they go absolutely bonkers with targets here from Geno Smith. Played up tempo. This is what I hope for with Ryan Grubb. But you have to love this, that he's back on track here. 12 catches, 16 targets on 117 yards, Michelle.
Yeah, after barely being utilized in week 1, he may have been dropped in some leagues. So he might be out there on waivers. And this is what I mean. I liked Jason coming to this year. I wanted him to be used more. 16 targets. He played 58 offensive snaps, right there with DK and Tyler Lockett. It was a lot of the three wide receiver sets. That's great. They get Miami next week, then the Lions, then the Giants. Like I hope he just keeps being utilized in this way because he is a good talent. I'm excited to see him. He's someone that I would definitely be eyeing if he's out. I mean, like I'd be putting in a priority if he was out there on my waivers. Now, what about who would you rather pick up here? Vinny, Quentin Johnston, who randomly has 2 receiving touchdowns, finishes as wide receiver 9 on the week, 5 receptions, 51 yards to go on top of that. Or Jalen Tolbert, who gets 9 targets, 82 receiving yards. He ends up being, that guy who kind of filled in with Ferguson gone. He kind of stepped into the extra target role instead of Brandon Cooks, who only got 2 targets in the game.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to go back and forth between Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert, depending on situations. I don't think the Cowboys also be throwing this much. They were trailing early in the game, and they had to get more people involved. As you mentioned, Jake Ferguson's out. Luke Schoonmaker was involved a little bit, but they seem to use Tolbert a little bit more because of the Ferguson injury. So when you look at that, I think I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston here because I think he's going to be a red zone factor for this team. I think the Chargers are going to quite be active scoring, and Justin Herbert started to look good. The foot injury was there in week 1, but if he's going to play off a dominant running game every week, he's going to find guys open, and this team is going to score. And when you have to worry about the back scoring, I think it's going to help Quentin Johnston. So Quentin Johnston could be one of those cheapy, big touchdown guys that you're looking for deeper leagues where I think Jalen Tolbert could easily disappear next week, where I think Johnson has just kind of proved himself to be involved. He was very efficient, caught all his targets, scored twice there. So I think maybe they're just scratching the surface and going to untap him a little bit more going forward.
Yeah, and he played a lot of snaps, 48 offensive snaps, 14 more than Ladd McConkey, 18 more than Josh Palmer. Like, if they can start to get him going, I mean, Justin Herbert has barely had to throw these first 2 weeks with who they have faced and how much they've been up. But once they get into some tougher matchups, and Herbert might have to throw a little bit more. But yeah, Quentin Johnson, someone to keep an eye on for sure. Jalen Tolbert, like you said, it's just going to go back and forth with Cooks and Tolbert. And then once Ferguson's back, you don't want to deal with that. With the running back position, Braylon Allen finishes as a running back 7 on the week, 18.6 fantasy points. He scores a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. And like I brought up, Aaron Rodgers is not the old Aaron Rodgers. He's dumping down a ton. They're leaning on the run game a ton with Breece Hall. Braylon Allen only had 7 carries, but he also had the 4 targets as well. Is this a guy that you can trust as a flex play, or was just a one-off week where he got lucky and got in twice?
Well, first, if you're listening to the show, you knew he was a premium guy that you wanted. I mean, there was a lot of attention on Blake Corum behind Kyron Williams. You knew about Jordan Mason being the healthy guy behind Christian McCaffrey, but underrated was Braylon Allen. He was clearly the guy that they're looking for, that Israel Abanikanda and some of these other guys that they put in the mix behind Breece Hall, but Braylon Allen immediately stood out. He was very productive at Wisconsin, by the way, so this is not a surprise. He's playing well in the NFL. So I think that said, I think his best value is as a handcuff. And I say this, that's very crucial, I think, because if you had Mason, he pivoted easily McCaffrey. In another league, I had Kenneth Walker. Did I care? No, I just plugged in Zach Charbonnet and basically got what I was looking for from Walker in that game. So, again, Braylon Allen, you must have him. If you're a Breece Hall manager and someone else has Allen, make a deal now for him to lock this up because he's explosive. I don't think he's going to have much standalone value going forward. The Jets are going to have to be really focused on the run, and Ed Rodgers doesn't get better with his targets. I think they'll improve there in some capacity, but it's really hard to trust these backs off the bench, right, who produce. Breece Hall is still the man. I think Allen will do more things here in this offense, but I would just wait and see. But unless you're a Breece Hall person, make sure you get Braylon Allen. Don't get stuck and let someone else get your points that you would have had with Breece Hall's backup.
Yeah, I have Braylon Allen sitting on my bench. I don't even have Breece Hall, but this is a premium handcuff guy. And it does seem like he has some potential to be an opportunity for a flex play in any given week because they're giving him snaps. And that was just his second NFL game. So we could see his snaps even increase as we move forward here. 2 tight ends who had great games. Mike Gesicki against the Chiefs, who, by the way, Isaiah Likely had a huge game against the Chiefs in week 1. didn't do anything in week 2. So if you spent up on
Yeah.
him on your waivers, you're not happy. But with Mike Gesicki, he's against the Chiefs, gets 7 receptions, 91 yards, tight end 5 on the week. He did only play 30 snaps, though. I want to say that.
Yeah.
And like Jamar Chase played 60 snaps. So he only played half of the snaps of this offense, not even half the snaps. So I don't know if I'm like dying to go get Mike Gesicki. Great game for him. And it is 2 nice matchups against Commanders and Panthers. He's an option. I'll say that, but I'm not dying to go get him. And then Hunter Henry, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 109 yards, tight end 3 in the week. This is who I thought we could get in week 1.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't utilized at all. So then I go off of him and then he is utilized like crazy because, there's no one else in this offense. My boy, Jalen Polk did catch a receiving touchdown though. That was exciting. They get to the Jets next week. I don't know. If you had to pick up Gesicki or Henry to start, if you have, Njoku or Ferguson on IR or on the bench with an injury, which one are you going with?
Yeah, I think Hunter Henry is going to be more consistent. You just look at his role. I mean, he's clearly the number 1 receiver there. Well, no, Mike Gesicki is sharing a lot of time. And if T. Higgins returns from his mysterious injury at some point, he's going to see less. And they're also committing that approach, right? To use a noun as a verb here, but they have Andre Iosivas and Jermaine Burton was their field stretcher to help with Higgins out. So, like, they're using other guys here. But Gesicki could have some value, not this type of value. I think he can score some touchdowns. They definitely have some red zone chemistry. He almost scored last week. Keep that in mind. They overturned it because his foot was a little bit out of bounds. So he's going to be involved in some high leverage situations. Keep in mind, the reason he's also not on the field is not a good blocker. So that's also a factor here. So I think you look at Gesicki, he's going to get more opportunities, especially if Higgins drags this thing out. They need to spread the ball around a little bit, and Joe Burrow definitely trusts him in key situations. So I don't think he is devoid of value, but if I'm going on the waiver wire, Hunter Henry is my high priority. That's a good transition to talking about week 3 waiver wire, where these 2 guys will probably factor in prominently, as well as some injury replacements that we're going to need for backs, starting with Isaiah Pacheco's backs up in Kansas City.
Yeah, we're going to dig way more into the waiver wire and about these players that we're going to consider picking up this week on tomorrow's show. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Don't forget to come listen to us tomorrow. Everyone have a great night and enjoy Monday Night Football. Bye, y'all.